Muchas gracias, Paco. Sabes que cuando llegamos en España no hablamos una palabra de español y estamos estudiando, estamos trabajando duro, pero no hay suficiente tiempo a estudiar y practicar porque estamos muy ocupados con las temas de España.
Thank you.
I want to thank, first of all, I usually introduce myself as the husband of the wife of the United States Ambassador to Spain. And I am really just the warm-up act here. But Susan and I are delighted to be here. I want to thank Paco and President Salvador and our friend Sergi for inviting us. We've been talking about coming to do this for quite some time. Actually, shortly after our arrival, our Consul General in Barcelona, who I believe is here, Greg Crouch, who we're delighted to be here with, mentioned this company and also this foundation. I did want to congratulate Abertis on being a really great company and a global company. It was here in this room, I believe, at a lunch about a year ago when Paco said to me, you know, we're in 22 countries, but Abertis can't really call itself a global company if we're not in the United States. And since that time, they've begun work in Puerto Rico. I know they're hoping to do work in Ohio and Virginia, so welcome to America. And but congratulations on your business success, and I know since last we talked, you've now the largest manager of toll roads in the entire world. So, but I also congratulate Abertis for your social mission. And at a summit that the embassy sponsored on service, Abertis, we recorded the corporate social responsibility projects of various companies that were our partners. Abertis described its mission as follows. For Abertis, corporate social responsibility is a way of understanding the company's role in society, taking in the environment, social and economic impact of its activities, and its relations with the different stakeholders. And I know about your volunteering plan, Voluntades, and the work that you're doing in Spain, in France, in Puerto Rico, in Chile. So I congratulate you for that. And I thank you because Abertis and its leadership has been a good friend to Susan and me, and we appreciate that very much. You've been a good friend to the U.S. Embassy, to the United States. We appreciated your support for our Service Innovation Summit. And we arrived last night in Barcelona, and we were delighted to find the very small but very nice gifts. And I'm sorry I didn't wear the tie, but if I had known it was striped, I wouldn't have brought a striped shirt. So forgive me. I wanted to talk for a few minutes about why this topic in general is so important to Susan and me. And then I'm going to turn it over to Susan to talk about corporate social responsibility in the United States. We come at it, I think, in a slightly different, from a slightly different place in terms of the importance of both civil society and citizenship and the responsibilities of citizens, including corporate citizens. You know, the United States has a long history and tradition of civil society. In fact, we waged a Revolutionary War by means of a civilian army, actually. Benjamin Franklin, in colonial days, noted that that a lot of the wood frame structures in Philadelphia were catching on fire and burning, and so he organized the first volunteer fire department to look after the fire safety in that city. Clara Barton, the nurse who tended to the injured soldiers in the Civil War, as a result of that experience, created the American Red Cross. And I know most people have read de Tocqueville and about how America is a country of people who like to join organizations and join together in collective activity. In more recent history, You recall President Kennedy at his inaugural address challenging Americans to ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. It was about almost a little more than 50 years ago that President Kennedy created the Peace Corps that has sent Americans around the world, now numbering 400,000, to work on projects in developing countries, to try to help developing countries develop. And I hope we've contributed a little bit to countries today that are themselves global leaders that were at that time places like Colombia or Brazil. During the campaign of President Clinton, I remember that one of the messages that was most warmly received was that if he were elected president, he would give Americans opportunities to serve their country, to serve their communities. And so when he was elected, he created something called the AmeriCorps, which is essentially a domestic Peace Corps. It's a program for Americans to take a year or two, mostly young Americans, but not exclusively, and go and work in places around the country for NGOs that need their help, that need their work. They're called volunteers, although they're paid a subsistence wage. There are 70 to 80,000 AmeriCorps volunteers now each year in our country, although there are millions of applicants, and we don't have the funds to support as many people as want to do that. President created something called the Corporation for National and Community Service to house the AmeriCorps program and all of the federally sponsored service programs, including VISTA and Senior Corps and Learn and Serve America. And then when President Obama ran for president against John McCain in 2008, John McCain and Barack Obama appeared together at a campaign forum specifically devoted to citizen service and community service. In fact, it was the subject of a Time magazine cover story. It was one of the things that the two candidates agreed upon. It's one of the few things, I think, today that Democrats and Republicans agree upon. And President Obama promised to make service a cause of his presidency. And the day before he was inaugurated, he and the soon-to-be First Lady and the Bidens went out to a school, and they helped paint actually a shelter, for homeless children as part of a national day of service. This is something that Susan and I have been very involved in personally. When I testified or when I appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on the way to becoming the U.S. ambassador, I said, I come before you at an auspicious moment in American history when the President and the Congress have challenged ordinary citizens to roll up their sleeves to help to solve the problems of their communities, of our nation, and indeed of the world. And that is something that Susan and I have devoted a good deal of our time and effort to in our lives and in our career. In my own case, I've served as a volunteer with a number of universities and hospitals, with political organizations, with NGOs, as a business person, and I did spend most of my career running a business. We looked at how we could use our corporate resources to make the communities in which we were invested better. This is also something that Susan and I have been privileged to share as a couple, since this is something that she's devoted her life and her professional career to, actually, both as spent first part of her career at our public television station in Boston, actually, one of the flagship stations in the country, WGBH, in the corporate development area, and then went to work for a not-for-profit organization called the Philanthropic Initiative that helps foundations and individuals and corporations design programs to have impact on their communities. And also as a volunteer, or as we like to call it, a lay leader. Susan has had enormous impact on our community. She helped build a new synagogue for our community. She helped organize an organization that that celebrates women in business. And so you are all lucky to have her here with you. Even in our capacity as the United States ambassadors, or the United States ambassador and ambassadora, we are not career diplomats. So we, I think, represent something a little bit unusual about the Foreign Service in the United States. Some people would refer to us as political appointees, but in fact, the non-career appointees that presidents appoint may be from the other party, may not be have a political connection at all. But what we are is we are citizen diplomats in the same sense that the very first ambassador to Spain from the United States, John Jay, who was a barrister, went on to become the governor of New York and a Supreme Court justice, so I have a lot of things ahead of me, I guess. Or Washington Irving, who was a great writer, was also a U.S. ambassador to Spain in the 19th century. And so I prefer to describe ourselves as citizen diplomats, but we did come to Spain with a deep commitment and interest and experience in this notion of civil society, citizen responsibility, whether it be private citizen or corporate citizen. And we came here with great curiosity about what we would find in Spain. In fact, before we arrived, I asked the embassy to prepare a paper for us about the nonprofit sector and about volunteering in this country. And they sent back a piece that Spain was not as reliant on citizens, on volunteering as our country, and it wasn't as much a part of the culture because people looked to the government to provide or they look to their families to take care of them, which they do in a wonderful way, or they look to the church. But when we got here, we discovered a lot more than we expected, and that met the eye, so to speak. A year ago, I went to Galicia for the 14th annual national conference on volunteering that is held every year here in Spain. The Ayuntamiento of Madrid has an office of social innovation and engages 3,000 people on a volunteer basis dealing with the issues of social issues of the city of Madrid. His Royal Highness the Prince of Asturias has a keen interest in this area. He was the United Nations chairman of the Year of the Volunteer about 10 years ago. He opened the conference in Galicia that I mentioned, and he closed the conference, he closed the conference in Galicia. He opened our conference on service innovation. We discovered also an incredibly strong commitment in Spain to corporate social responsibility, both on the part of U.S. companies who operate here, like IBM or Alcoa, but also on the part of great global companies that are based in Spain, like Abertis. And in fact, I think we've discovered a lot that we can learn from. But we also discovered a country that I think is in transition, is fair to say, as the world is in transition, and where the need for a more robust civil society is apparent to many. I've heard this repeatedly from some of the leaders of this country, lay leaders of this country, like Antonio Garrigues or Eduardo Serra, the importance of engaging citizens because of the limits of what the government can do, and frankly, with the limits of what families can do. And so we have identified this as an area where we thought the United States Embassy could play a constructive role in sharing some of our experiences in the United States, in sharing best practices. We've done a number of things, including work with schools, both in Barcelona and in Madrid, work with English language teaching assistants in the schools, some of the bilingual schools in Madrid, to help connect youngsters with social investments in their community. A couple of weeks ago, the consulate in Barcelona helped organize a 5-kilometer run to raise money for Make-A-Wish Foundation that was done as a partnership between the American School of Barcelona and the Benjamin Franklin School. We use our International Visitors Leadership Program to send leaders from the voluntary sector of Spain to the United States to see some of the things that we're doing. We hosted this Service Innovation Summit to bring leaders from Spain together with leaders from the United States to talk about what we could learn from one another, and we try to get out and talk about our experiences as a way of trying to make a contribution in this area to this country. Susan, for her part, has made this part of her own portfolio and leads an effort at the embassy called Volunteers in Action, which is an effort to engage embassy staff in doing volunteer work around Madrid, especially where the embassy is located. She has reached out to the philanthropic world using her experience and talents and in her own career. I often tell audiences that Barack Obama got a bargain when he sent us to Spain. He got 2 for the price of 1. And sometimes I think he got 3 for the price of 1. But this is really, the area of corporate social responsibility is an area in which my partner and dear spouse is an expert in, so I think probably you've heard enough from me, and the husband of the wife of the U.S. Ambassador to Spain is going to turn it over to the wife of the U.S. Ambassador to Spain to give her remarks.